Hi, this is Mr. Estabrooks. In this video, I'm going to show you how to model the Automoblox Axle from Activity 5.5. This comes right after the rubber handle sleeve, and like the previous part, we're going to use the revolve tool. This sketch is going to be a little bit more complicated than the rubber handle sleeve. You can see there's a lot more going on, and note you're only modeling the upper half here, that blue shaded area. Then we're going to revolve that around the center line, and we're off to the races. Now looks a little bit, it's a lot more complicated, and there's a lot of dimensional constraints we need, but we're going to break this down and take it one step at a time. And the first step is to start your sketch, and don't worry too much about any dimensions, but you're going to have to pay attention to your geometric constraint prompts and cues. So you're going to have to go back and forth looking at the image and in the illustration. But basically, here's the first spot where students get into trouble. If you end this line here, notice it's going to be, the endpoint is going to be coincident with this point down here. We don't want that. If you look at the sketch, those two lines are not collinear. So we need to stop that line short of that. Then we can go up a little further over. These lines here on this side are coincident. I'm not going to worry. I'm not going to make this coincident with that. I'm going to keep these separate. Then we need to go, the key thing about this line here that I'm drawing is it's not horizontal. Do not let it snap to horizontal. Do not also watch the other cues where if you put it in a certain spot, it's going to want to snap like right there. Make sure you don't snap anywhere where it's going to be coincident with other points. Right there, it's snapping onto the midpoint of this line way over here. So you want to avoid any of that. Just make it some angle. This line here, you need to make it distinctly vertical. It's not going to want to be vertical. It's going to want to be 90 degrees to the previous line. But if you move along carefully and pay close attention, like right there, don't click there because that's going to make that point coincident with another point on the sketch, and we don't want that. Instead, we want to pick just a spot in in open space, then go over here. Then you'll find this line here now, I believe is this point, and the line that I'm going to draw next, I believe is collinear. These two lines right there, judging by the diameter here and the diameter there. So we can make that coincident as long as it's a vertical line. Then we go over here, horizontal, and then we just need one last line to close that up. I'm not sure why my line command. Oh, here I got a problem. See, that's okay. So this is inevitable. And in this part here, you're inevitably going to have some issues here. And what I want to do is make those 2 points coincident. And how much you want to bet this causes me some problems. But let's try it. Okay, no, that wasn't too bad. So there's our basic sketch. Okay, now the next part is kind of the hard part where we have to take this and make it look, we have to dimension it with all those dimensions. Here's what I recommend you do. Make notes in your engineering notebook about which dimensions you've done and cross them off as you go. If you count them up, there are 15 dimensions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Now, depending on how you use your geometric constraints, you may not need all 15 of them. But before we do any of that, you'll notice these are dimensioning the diameter. This is what we call an inside diameter here, another inside diameter, this is an outside diameter, and so on. And they show here a long center line. Well, we don't need to make a long center line. We can just revolve it around here, but we do want to make this line. So select that line, and up in your format panel, make that a center line. It doesn't need to extend beyond the edges of the part. It's fine just like that. Now, when we make these diameter dimensions, I'll start with this first one on the right, 0.19. You'll notice I dimension basically the diameter, not this horizontal diameter, right, because that wouldn't be a diameter, but the diameter of the opening, like that. You'll notice it's going to like an imaginary point down below where the other side of the Automoblox axle will be once we revolve it. And this dimension is 0.19. That shrinks everything down, and we can go on. So all the diameter dimensions, you're going to do like that. This one right here, I can't remember these dimensions. I got to keep going back and forth. 0.19, 0.25, 0.29. And you'll notice some of them are the same over here. So depending on, again, how you used your geometric constraints in the making of the sketch, you may not need all of these. 0.25. And then we continue on. 0.30 was that, I think. Looks like that's what it wants to be. Etc., etc., etc. All the way around. Okay, so I've finished the dimensions almost, and I've cleaned them up a bit. I may have had a mistake in there somewhere, but I tightened them up so that they look like what you see in the illustration. Over here, they're all in the same spot. You'll notice a couple things. First of all, I have not done this little 0.01 dimension on that angled line. That's the tricky one, and I recommend saving that for last. Also, you'll notice I'm missing one of my inside diameters. I don't have a 0.19, and that's because I used my geometric constraints when I was creating the sketch to make sure this line was collinear with that line by placing this point here on the corner and making it collinear with the line across the way. So because of that geometric constraint, I don't need the inside dimension there of 0.19. However, I'm not fully constrained. Now, if you look at the sketch, the illustration in the packet, you'll notice the 0.01 goes from like up here down to there. So it's really oddball, and it's hard to do. I'm going to zoom way in here with the scrolling the mouse wheel, and then you need to click first here and then here, and it's going to want to make a horizontal dimension. That's not what we want. We want a vertical dimension, and it won't let you do it if you're not zoomed in enough. So zoom right in till you can see what's going on, and then you'll be able to place that vertical dimension here right like that. There we go. See that? Drop that in. 0.01. It's a very shallow horizontal line, and then if we want to clean that up and put that dimension where it is on the illustration, you know, we can put that over there. Okay, so you'll notice we're still not fully constrained, and that's because this line here, or I should say this point, can move. This line here can get shorter and longer, and that's because I did not make this point collinear with that line over there. So we're going to do that right now using the coincident. I'm going to choose that point, that line, and there we go. So you can see this sketch is a little finicky, but once you finish all those constraints, that's pretty much the lion's share of it, and the rest is fairly straightforward. So we're going to finish the sketch. We're going to use the revolve tool. We're going to choose, it automatically chooses that center line that we created. Make sure you do 360, click OK, and now the only thing we have left to do, if I go back over here, is cut that slot. You'll notice the slot is 0.04 inches wide by 0.2 inches deep. And the easiest way to do that is to make a new sketch right on this 2D sketch, right on this surface here. Use your 2-point center rectangle like this. Go from the center of those concentric circles up here. It doesn't matter how far up you go, really, because we're going to cut this out. All you need to do is then dimension that line to 0.04. Wow, got pretty close. 0.04. It doesn't really matter. You don't have to. It's not going to be a fully constrained sketch because this can move. But if you want to constrain it, it actually gets difficult because you don't want to constrain it to any of the geometry because it won't cut all the way through. I wouldn't worry about it. Just leave that hanging there. As long as it's wider than the diameter of the Automoblox axle, you'll be fine. And then we're going to extrude that. You have to choose that whole rectangle. And then over here, notice we don't want to add that. That's not what we want. We want to use the cut option. And we don't want to cut the whole thing in half. We want the depth to be, I think it was 0.20, maybe. That looks about right. We could verify that on the illustration, but there you go. So that's your finished Automoblox part, 0.04 by 0.20 depth.